if this money comes into football or into the EFL, we need to make sure that we've got stringent rules in place to make sure less money does go to players. Revenue within League One has risen by 21% this year, which is on one side is brilliant, but the money going out to players is increased by 58%. And if that continues to happen, it's not a good look for football, it's not a good look for the sustainability of the game long term. If you look at most football clubs, the majority of the money goes out on player budgets. That's where it's been. We had a head coach where we were spending a lot more money. We got 12th in League One, which is, for a club of Shrewsbury Town size, that was a fantastic position. But at the same time, losing £3.2 million with one owner doesn't have a long-term future.
Liam, it is so good to have you, dude. Thank you so much for joining us today.
No, thank you very much for having me. It's been a long couple of days, but I'm really happy to be here. And it's not often I'm in London, so really good to be here and see you both.
I was going to say, fresh off the back of the Owners and Executives Football League Conference. What's it like when you guys all get together?
It's really good. It's the first time this year it's been this time of the season. Usually it's right at the end, so you know where you stand in terms of promotion, relegation, and it tends to be congratulating people or commiserating people at the time. But this time you've literally been playing each other on Saturday and you've got somebody else this weekend, so there's such a good camaraderie amongst the execs that it's strange when you actually put a football match in front of them, because you go from being really friendly and really pally to fiercely competing with them at that weekend, but you go back to being friends afterwards, and just spending time with people that know what it's like to be in the position's really nice, to actually bounce ideas off each other, but also it's just almost like a counselling session. We say, you're going through that problem, we're going through the same thing, and yeah, it's good. And to be honest, there are so many people. I know you've had quite a lot of League One CEOs on there, and you speak to them and they're so genuine because they're doing this job, they're living it, breathing it, and we're all in the same boat.
What are the things at the moment, like this year, that have been of particular kind of relevance?
I think the football governance bill is massive, because see, it's playing out in front of everybody's eyes in terms of the next reading of that is next month. We're hopeful that's going to do the right thing for the EFL and make sure that there is some kind of deal going forward that will mean that the future of football is more shared from a revenue perspective, and will help us all ships rise in high tide. I think that's what we'd like to try and get to. But to make sure there's some debate going off constantly between the Premier League and the EFL, so we can do our own deal. And I think that's what the regulator's there to do, is try and get us to make our own deal without them actually having to force both parties into a position.
Out of interest, how much do you think is on the Premier League to have a better distribution deal financially with the Premier League, but then also for Football League clubs to be able to leverage their own assets and inventories to be able to make more money? What in your mind is the balance between those two in these discussions?
I think it's going to be different for all clubs at that stage. So you look at how do we physically take that money? What would we use it for? What would another club use it for? I think the Premier League are nervous, because I think if you look at football clubs in general in the EFL, pretty much everybody is losing money at the moment. So they're thinking, well, are we just giving these guys more money to lose more money? That's what we need to try and stop as a collective. And that was discussed at the last Owners Executive Conference last year. And then it's been brought back up this year as to what do we do to get our own house in order, so that should the deal happen, we are all in a position where everybody can benefit and we don't just throw that money straight out the window.
You said everyone's losing money. It's kind of like the very central question of every business of sport, but it's still one that we oscillate on, which is like, is a sports club a viable investment, or is it just a passion project for very wealthy owners?
I think it can be. If a sporting organisation is run correctly, it's got a strategy, it's got a model, I think it can be a way of making profit in the longer term. But I do think there is a little bit of that, is the people that own football clubs, and it's going away from the model of the butcher, baker, candlestick maker owning that from a local background. It tends to be groups of people that own them now. But I do think there's that excitement of sport that means that there's a middle ground somewhere between you want to be competitive, you want to have that passion project, but at the same time you do want to be as sustainable as you can. So I think it's club dependent, really.
Do you not think performance is like inversely correlated with profit? And what I mean by that is you have to spend if you want to get up there.
I think you're absolutely right. The previous Owners Execs conference, I was chatting away to to Nick Craig, who works for the EFL, and he said, look, we can show you the graphs that show where you spend is roughly where you finish. The correlation's so tight in terms of if you've got the lowest budget, the chances are you'll finish in 24th position in if you're in one of the EFL leagues. It is really that. You get the odd outliers that do really well, but they are few and far between. It does tend to be the people that spend the most are the ones that have the most success, and I think that unfortunately will continue to be the way. But for clubs like ourselves, we've just got to continue to operate as efficiently as we can and hope we've got a good manager, a good models, a good run of recruitment that means that we can finish and outperform our budget. And I think outperforming your budget has almost become a key KPI for every club that's in the EFL at the moment.
So one thing that, again, we talk about quite a lot, but to me, it's really, really important is you get more money as a club. Let's say a better distribution deal gives you more money. As Harry just highlighted, spend and success are generally the two things everyone thinks to get up. We just need to spend more. So you get more money. What happens to you, Shrewsbury Town, to make sure that you don't just go and spend the more money you get on player wages and transfer fees? Because that currently is the concern, right? More money just inflates the things that you're currently spending money on. It doesn't allow you to actually develop as a business. Yeah,
I think two people that you've had on the podcast before spoke really passionately last time around at the Owners Execs conference, Charlie Methven and Liam Scully both. If this money comes into football or into the EFL, we need to make sure that we've got stringent rules in place. And there has been, and we're in the motion at the moment of putting through more change to try and tighten that to make sure less money does go to players, because this is no disrespect to the players that are playing the game, but the players aren't getting exponentially better year on year, but the wages continue to rise. I'll get the numbers slightly wrong on this, but one of the facts that we heard today at the conference is revenue within League One has risen by 21% this year, which is, on one side is brilliant, but the money going out to players has increased by 58%. And if that continues to happen, it's not a good look for football. It's not a good look for the sustainability of the game long term.
What is driving player wage inflation?
I think you mentioned it is you spend more, you achieve more, you get higher up the league. It's clubs want to compete. Clubs want to get that extra striker. They want to get that extra midfielder. They want to get 20. You've got 20 pros in your squad, 22 pros, 25 pros within your squad. If you've got that extra squad depth, you think you can pinch an extra few points, gets you in the playoffs, gets you up the league. You're always chasing success, and you've got behind that, you've got fans that want success, but they tell you they want to be a sustainable club at the same time. So I think the more clubs compete, it's like any market. There's a scarcity and a demand to everything, and the more people want to sign a certain player, the more that money goes to the player, to the agent, and disappears out the game.
But is it the problem for you as a, should we say, smaller budget League One club to have a team like a Birmingham in the league spending 10 to 15 million, i.e. more than the turnover of the majority of clubs in that league, on a single player while you're competing in that same environment, therefore naturally just inflating the market that you're operating in?
If you look at that particular example of Birmingham, someone discussed it yesterday, is Wrexham and Birmingham good for League One, good for where we are? Well, as it happens, we're the only club that have beaten both Wrexham and Birmingham this season, which is definitely unexpected. But you look at the league and think, well, if that's bringing in bigger audiences, and part of the conference we've been talking about is the media rights overseas, the media rights in America in particular, if those people are bringing new eyeballs to the sport, then actually it is good for League One, it is good for the EFL, but it does make it difficult.
And also, it must lead to asset price inflation for all the clubs in the league, no?
Yeah, but these are not big businesses. And I think this is the interesting part of football. They're not huge businesses. They are massively valuable brands and community assets, and they're far bigger in that sense than they are as a financially generating kind of asset. That's probably one of the hard things for someone like you to manage, isn't it? You've got all this passion and peace on the side, but actually the financials to match it are quite hard.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a turnover of £6.9 million. That's not a big business in any other area. However, we've got 6,500 fans coming through the gates every week, and this is one of the most important things in the life. The other difference with football is everybody cares about what's going off at the club. It's not like if you run a barber shop or AI companies we talked about earlier, people think, oh, brilliant, the business is doing well. No one's sat there waiting for you to post your results on Company's House. No one's literally wanting to come in and demand you've done this a certain way. Why have you done it? How have you done it? It's so different that for that amount of stress and that amount of work that goes into it, you'd probably want that to be 2-3 times the turnover that you are, but you're you're kind of limited to the area that you're in. The supporter base tends to be historic, and our job is to just incrementally increase that each year if we can, to try and get that turnover to rise. Fans want investment. Fans want to see the clubs progress, but you try and every club at the moment we're putting through their early bird season tickets, and you start putting the prices up on things, and you've got an absolute meltdown on your hands. So it's always a tough balance to make sure that you're trying to increase the revenues in the way that you can, but you're never going to suddenly double your revenue unless you get a really successful player trading model. And that's why a lot of clubs are going down the director of football style, and that's what Shrewsbury Town have done, because we realise that making profit from the pitch is one of the ways that you can actually grow that revenue if you start working through bringing through non-league players, bringing through academy players, and upward trading those players is a way to increase your revenue.
So can you break down that 7 million then? Like what is attributed in that to media rights and sponsorship and then licensing, ticketing, merchandising?
So if you look at, so I'll go a little bit off subject to come back to it. As a club, when I came in through the door, we lost £3.2 million. We were generating 6, spending 9, rough numbers. To get that back to where you've got to break it down and go, well, hang on a minute, how much of that money is on player wages? Well, 68% of that, 74% of that money was being spent on wages in 2023. We've dropped that to 67. So £4.4 million of 6.9 was spent on wages, player costs, everything that goes with it. That's not our player wage budget. That's if you put everything there. That's your hotels, that's your food for the players, that's your kit costs, that's everything. Bringing that number down is how you make a big difference in making the club as sustainable as you can. Where you find that is, as we mentioned, if you start making cuts to that budget, your performance in the league does tend to suffer as a result. So,
and are you really going to get the best players be like, yes, I want to go there, when like you've already cut the quality of the chicken you're serving in the canteen, and you're not giving them the massages and the hydrotherapy centre and the da-da-da-da-da?
It's true. For me, you've got to get everybody at the club to buy into the culture that we are trying to be sustainable, and that's getting the messaging right when people come through the door. And we've got a head coach at the moment that's come in and understands that. We've got Gareth Ainsworth at Shrewsbury Town at the moment, and he's done that at Wickham. He's built a career on the fact that he's gone into a club and taken it from a team and built it into a club. The same thing, he understands the financial situation that we're in, and he said, let's focus on what we have got versus what we haven't. Try and build something off the field, on the field together. That means, do you know what, we can do this on a smaller budget, and the belief that that's given the fans, but also as a off the field team, that you've got a manager that understands it has really helped. Now, like anybody, we'd love to get more investment into the club. We're working on that at the moment. He'd love that as a manager. We'd love that to be able to start doing future facing projects rather than what we've tended to do for the last 18 months that I've been there, which is fight fires every day.
What else is there?
So in terms of running a football club, you've got your day-to-day costs, you've got admin, like you've got overheads, you've got purchases, you've got staff to run the club, you've got to get your lighting on, you've got your electric on, you've got your heating, the whole thing of running a normal business. You've got to do that day-to-day, but then you've also got the thing of, right, how do we feed people? How do we get a team on the pitch on a Saturday? So there's a lot of stuff that goes into that. If you look at most football clubs, the majority of the money goes out on player budgets. That's where it's been. We had, I don't want to throw anybody under a particular bus at the moment, but we had a head coach where we were spending a lot more money. We achieved a brilliant finish. We got 12th in League One, which is, for a club of Shrewsbury Town size, that was a fantastic position. But at the same time, losing £3.2 million with one owner doesn't have a long-term future. You've got somebody there who wants to put everything they can into supporting the football club, but if you continue to lose money at that rate, you won't have a football club in a few years' time. That's why we had to make the changes that we did.
How are you doing commercially? What's the kind of inventory, the partnership revenue coming through? How are you selling and packaging the club on that side?
So we went, from our year that we've just done, where we've lost 1.5 from the 3.2, we've increased our turnover by 600 grand. A lot of that money comes out of ticket sales. So we achieved our high season ticket sales. We achieved good home attendances because we were doing well in the league as well. We'd put the ticket prices up slightly, which you have to do to keep the money coming through the door and keep that growing.
How was that? Was that okay with the fans?
We do a lot of communicating with our supporters. So part of the things when I joined Shrewsbury Town was I said, we'll tell you what we're doing. we communicate all the time. So we have open letters going out to the fans every 12 weeks explaining what's just happened, why it happened, but what, not only that, but what is coming, so that when things happen, we like to think they know what's coming. They're a part of the journey. And I think if they buy into what the journey is, then you're more likely to keep them on side. It doesn't always work, but that's what we've tried to do. So even things like ticketing, a very live example, we are about to do our early bird season tickets in the next couple of weeks. So we've got we call it a fan engagement panel, but we have a open Zoom call on Monday where we invite every single supporter can come along. We send a link out and say, look, anybody can jump on if you'd like to discuss with myself, with the ticketing manager, with our ticketing provider themselves. We're moving to a new system. Anybody that would like to come and discuss that topic with us and give you feedback, we'll show you what we think's right. We'll listen to what you want to say, and sometimes we'll go with it, sometimes we won't, but we want to involve you in that dialogue. And we think that that's helped people understand why we do things. Don't always agree with it, but I think if you ask the fans now, having been communicated to and been part of the strategy, are you happy with that, or just being given a blind price for it? I think the communication worked.
Do you agree Peter Kenyon got a lot of stick, I think he said, for saying that your fans are your customers?
I spent 5 years at Sheffield Wednesday, and that had been, somebody there had said that at the time, and sometimes I think the word gets used and then people hung up on it. Ultimately, it's a business. Clients, fans, customers, if there's a transaction take place, technically you are. I'd always go with supporters, because I believe that if you buy a shirt, if you buy a ticket, I think you're a supporter and you're part of that club. But I don't see a problem in the terminology, as long as you're doing the right thing by that person, whatever you call them, and you've got the interests of the club, the supporter, the fan, the customer at heart. I think that's what doing your job right's about, is looking after the people, because the football club is miles bigger than the chief exec, miles bigger than the people that paid to it representing them, even bigger than the chairman. They're custodians of that football club. In 50 years' time, you just want to have done the right thing by those people and by those supporters, because they'll outlive you at that club. So maybe the terminology is wrong from some people, customers, but for me, it's stakeholders is probably the best way to describe it.
You've halved your operating loss in a year, but as you said, you're now in the bottom four, so you're relegation threatened on the pitch.
Mm-hmm.
Good business achievement. You and I started talking off the back of this, the release of the financials, and as you said, something to be celebrated because of the challenges of football finance at the moment. How do you counter the most important thing really to the majority of the fans, and quite often in football, which is this is a game of winning on a Saturday?
I think I hark back to what we've just said on the communication. If they know that it's going to be tough before it starts, I think that's important. Our messaging at the start of the season was all about, we put a video out from the media team. We've got a fantastic media team, and they put a video out, underdogs do win, was the message. So we start the season saying, we know this is going to be tough from day one. But I think it's getting fans to understand where you sit, and we're really proud of the fact that we're the longest serving team in League One. We've done 10 consecutive seasons, and we've been hammering that message out to say, for Shrewsbury Town, the size of the club, the number of people we get through the turnstile, that is a good achievement. And the natural position to sit is somewhere probably where in the lower reach in League One, upper end of League Two, and then push on, provided you get everything right. You then have one big go at it because you're sustainable, because you've started selling players, you've got a little bit more of a budget. That's when you can go and try and just keep growing that little bit every season. But it is tough because fans don't want to know what's going off on the balance sheet. Fans just want to see you win 3-0 at home on a Saturday. And there'll always be a certain part of fans that just don't care. They want to pay the season ticket money, want to come in and want to see them. That's perfectly fine. But you also now, because of social media, you've got that second generation of fans that actually want to know what's going off and want to challenge you. And you've got really intelligent, successful people that are just on the turnstile on a Saturday, but want to go, hang on a minute, why? And we want to try and educate them as to why, not in a patronising way, educate them, but show them that this is how you run a normal business, but it is kind of different in football because you've got so many different non-numerical KPIs that you've got to try and deliver.
You mentioned there about obviously looking for investment and that being an integral part of a football club. Tell us about the ownership structure currently and how you're actually looking to attract more people into the investment side of the club.
So from day one, as I walked into Shrewsbury Town, I didn't go in there blind and I wasn't kind of caught off guard by this. The conversations were, we are looking for investment. The chairman of Shrewsbury Town is Rowan Wycherley, MBE. He has had the club for 29 years as chairman. I think he is the longest serving chairman within the league, or within the EFL, not just within League One, and has done an unbelievable job, taking it from the old Gay Meadow where it floods twice a year, doesn't have a safety certificate, literally one of the sort of famous grounds in football from that perspective, the coracle where the ball goes in the river and comes, all of that, but to where it is now, which is a fantastic 10,000 seat purpose-built stadium sat on 24 acres of land with the oldest thing that's within the entire plot is 17 years old. It's done a fantastic job to be there, and to be, as I mentioned, to be 10 years in League One is phenomenal. But he'll say himself, and there comes a time when football, because of the likes of Wrexham, Birmingham, the outside investment that we've talked about, isn't attainable anymore for a local man that's come from nothing, built an entire business, sold his business, done really, really well for himself, dreamed to own the football club, done a brilliant job, but has come to a point where he said, I can't do this anymore. And that's when we've been like, how do we go and do it? And you'll see from the people that you've spoken to and the amount of clubs at the moment that even this week, clubs saying we're now in exclusivity with a particular investor. We are at that stage ourselves. So we went out via a couple of agents to the market to try and sell the football club.
Is that how you do it? Like, you're not going on eBay. How does one put a club up for investment?
I mean, daft as it sounds, you can't go out there and put a for sale sign outside the front of it, but we try and, for every bit of press that I did, was to say, look, we're looking for investment. We got a bit of stick at the time because we kept saying we're actively seeking succession. But then it moved on, and there was I can't remember the exact narrative, but we were getting a little bit more of that and the people making memes up of the rest of it. But we knew that there's always been expressions of interest. People come in, and there's an awful lot of people that want to say they want to buy a football club. But when it comes to it, and you say, okay, let's see some proof of funds, let's see what do you want to do? Give us your plans. Give us if you want to spend that much money to buy the club, surely you've got a plan for what you want to do. And it doesn't take long to get to the point where you think, actually, I'm not sure on these particular people. We've had people from all over the world come and speak to us.
Do they want to buy whole ownership, part ownership?
Most people that we've spoken to tend to want to buy the whole thing. We're in a position where our current chairman controls 92% of the business. So that is anything over 75% in football is complete ownership. But we're in a strong position from that perspective. They want to come in and run it like you would if you're going to spend that amount of money. You mentioned earlier on, is it a vanity project? It becomes their baby. They want to do something good with it.
Are there many illegitimate buyers? Are there many people who actually kind of pretend they have the cash and don't?
I'm sure there's those. I'm not going to go into any specifics on that, but it's so easy now to get in touch with people, as you see yourselves. You've got LinkedIn, you've got a direct line to most people. You can get hold of the CEO, you can get hold of finance directors, you can get hold. Sometimes the owners respond to people directly on those kind of mediums. So you can have a conversation depending on whether you've got 50p or 50 million. As if you come across in a certain way, it's about cutting the wheat from the chaff as you do it and saying, well, quite early we got to the point where we were saying, look, we're not going to have the conversation unless you can show us your proof of funds early doors, because if not, we're just wasting your time and wasting our time in it. We do want to sell the football club, and we believe that at the time when we chose to go exclusive with our current partner or future investor, we had three people at the table. We looked at everything they wanted to do and thought, do you know what, this is the right guy that we want to work with. And having had something for 29 years, the chairman said, and I genuinely believe him, he said it's like selling one of his kids. Because he's been there that long, he wants to make sure that who he sells it to is the right person.
I'm really interested. Of those, when you're looking through those proposals, let's say, and please, I appreciate the discretion, but what right now, for you as a CEO for the fans, what does a good owner look like? What are you looking for?
I think if you asked our fans this question, rather than me as someone who's come to the area in the last 18 months, because of what we've talked about in terms of what we built, 24 acres of land, beautiful stadium, everything that's there, they don't want someone to come in and asset strip that. They see that land, it's a brilliant part of the world. And, well, hang on a minute, we can take that patch of land, we can parcel that off, sell that, sell this, sell the other, then all of a sudden you're just left with a football club in the middle. They want to make sure that what's being built is there. There's then that sporting competitive side that we've talked about, is the fans want to see us succeed. So same, I'll use it, what I can talk about, and say what the chairman was looking for was someone that's not going to asset strip the place, but also has written into what he wants to do is they must make a commitment to what they're going to invest in the squad, because he wants to see the club do well. You don't want him to come in and go, well, actually we're not that bothered. We want to succeed. He wants to still come here, wants to lives, breathes, dies in the town, wants to say, I've done the best thing I could do while I was here, but not only that, I've moved on, but I left you in the best possible hands that are there. From a CEO perspective, you want to see a bit more detail. You want to see what is the actual plan. Do you want to build a hotel? Do you want to come in? Do you want to fill the corners in the stadium? Is it a player trading model you want to do? Is it something that's just for the team? What's the actual meat and bones on the plan?
Out of interest, I know it's true for a lot of deals. Have you seen a lot of the interest come through as looking at this as a real estate play as much as it is a sports play?
I think the area of Shrewsbury in particular, there's a lot you can do with that land, because there's a shortage of hotels, there's a shortage of nurseries, the land's developable, you'd be making the place better. So you do get people that go, we can use this as part of a football club. We've got natural attraction to the area, a natural footfall that comes through every weekend. Could we put food establishment there? Could we put a pub on there? Could we do all that kind of stuff? Becomes part of what people put together. But I do think a lot of people, it is just the football side. There's only within the football, within the EFL, there's 72 clubs you can buy. If you own one of those, and you can, most people want to play sport. If you can't play sport, you want to work sport. People get excited by it, and that's a good thing. The more people want to come and invest in our game, the better.
What is the budget this year? Sorry.
Our budget, I'll not give the exact numbers, but we are fully aware that we've got the lowest budget in League One.
Okay. How does that change with the new owner?
That depends on what they want to put into that. Our manager's gone on the record, so we've got Gareth Ainsworth, as I mentioned, in charge, and he said he doesn't need a massive budget. He just wants a little bit extra to be able to build something, and that's exciting for us, because we're not saying we need the next Ryan Reynolds. Don't get me wrong, we'd love to have that kind of investment, but we just need somebody that's going to say, right, if you're operating on this current on X, if I give you the additional Y, that will take you from being 24th budget in the league to mid-table. He said at the fans forum, I can build something with that. And from our perspective, just anything that sees us be more competitive would be brilliant in the eyes of the fans.
Do you need to have multiple budgets for where you are right now, based on the fact that you look at probably staying in the league, going down, investment, not investment?
Yeah, we've been in that process for a while, in that we've almost have to build 4 budgets, in that if you have investment, there's a League One budget and a League Two budget. If you don't have the investment, where we are now, you have to build one that says, right, this is keep using the word sustainable, but this is our sustainable budget in League One and League Two. And here's if we did have a little bit of money, where would we go shopping for players? What would we do differently? What would we invest in? And the stuff that can go back to your revenue question earlier on, that 6.9 million, it is pretty rigid. But if you start saying, right, we're going to build the other things that I've talked about within the 24 acres that you've got, all of a sudden that number can rise. And it's not just from having 23 home games a season or 25 with cup games. It's from putting extra things in there. Can you get concerts back to the stadium? They're the bits where you go, actually, how do we get that number to just incrementally grow up each year?
What do you not do today that you would like to do to add revenue lines to the business? Could be concerts, could be housing developments, could be, you name it.
I've mentioned a couple of them then, but what I've put to the new owner and what they've come back to us is, if you've got unlimited budgets, there's a big shortage in the area of Shrewsbury for hotels. You'd obviously have to speak to the councils, do all this is blue sky thinking. Nursery, anything there's a shortage of, that's what we need to do. We've got one of the most valuable commodities in that we've got land. So you look at and go, what can we do with hotels? What can we do with nurseries? What can we do with paddle tennis? What can we do? All those kind of, where you think, where's the demand? What can we do on that particular land? That's what we build. You look at, we've got a purpose-built stadium, as I mentioned, but it's got 4 individual stands with 4 corners open, deliberately built that way so that if the club progressed to the Championship, at 10,000, you don't have to change anything. You've got the right stadium to be promoted. But if you're in there, we've grown from having 2,500 fans at the Game Meadow to 6,500 fans at the Crowd Meadow. What can you do if you went up a division? That's where the investment comes in. Well, that's not a million miles away. If you can build something in the corners out of, you've seen full stadiums been modular built at the moment. Could you build something, one of those things I've just said, in the corner that's glass fronted, that can have multi-purpose to be used in the week to make money, but also can double up as revenue, or as quiet spaces for autism at the weekend? Could you have those multifaceted buildings that make the ground look better, but also add to that revenue line 365 days a year? We have a really good conferencing facility that's in the area. And it's very rare that you don't come to our stadium. There's something going on every day. But if we had more facilities available, we'd actually be able to spell more of it. So, yeah, you'd build more, speculate to accumulate.
Everyone likes to talk about like match day experience revenue, getting people in for beers before, hot dogs in the middle, and then beers after or whatever. To what extent is that actually a meaningful part of revenue, or just kind of hundreds and thousands on top of the ice cream?
There's a bigger piece in that. So yes, you've got the match day revenue from doing it, but it's the fact if you're coming to that, you built football's about. You do the same thing. You go with your dad, you go with your mum. You've done the same thing all your life. If you can increase that dwell time from, we just go 10 minutes before kick-off and grab a burger, but you can make something fun in a fan zone where someone's going for an hour and a half because you've got penalty shootouts with the mascot in the fan zone, or you've got a band on, or you've got inflatable dartboards, or you've got anything like that. All things that we're working on getting towards. That extra £5 that you're getting from someone at the moment can suddenly be £20. That routine that someone's got into, well, they're bringing one kid, they have another one, the friend wants to come, and that's how you gradually grow the amount of time people spend there, the more money you generate. But also by having the routines, you create that for years to come, and you make it more enjoyable. You can't always win every game of football. Definitely can't into Shrewsbury Town on our budget. But if you can make the whole day a good day out, that's why it's important, because then they'll go, do you know what? I will buy a shirt. I buy into this, so I'll pick up this today. And that's what we've got to try and do. That we control the controllables. What can you control? How's the rest of the day? What happens in about 90 minutes? Unfortunately, that's where we have to just sit back and just hope for the best.
Are longer drawn out investment processes, are they kind of enemies of innovation in football clubs? Because naturally an owner who wants to sell wants to kind of keep as much money in the club to make it look as financially solid and sound as possible, not necessarily put outlays, on things that may take a little bit of time to develop. The longer this goes on, are you almost in a bit of a zombie state around what you can do? You need a resolution here eventually, surely.
It sounds like you were in our board meeting on Tuesday, Charlie, with that, because I like to do things quickly. I like to do things fast. I think football misses that sometimes, is that things have always been done in a certain way. So if you want to try and speed things up, you've got to go through certain processes. And right now, because we're in that juxtaposition between is the revenue coming or not, we're going, well, the things that we've been discussing could actually happen now with limited outlay, or you could borrow the money to do that. But the last thing you want to be doing, if you're in the sale process you mentioned, is going to say, we haven't got any debt on our stadium whatsoever. We don't want to be going and mortgaging or putting up capital, putting up bits of property to leverage to get cash when you're about to get someone to come and buy it. It's not the right time. But at the same time, the longer you leave it, the more you're hampering your long-term progress.
Not specifically about Shrewsbury, how much is like a League One team like average price?
There are various models that you can use to value a football club. So, I mean, I walked into the door and luckily I know Professor Rob Wilson, who's a football finance expert, and he did me before I came in, and my due diligence before going to Shrewsbury, a model of using the multivariate, it would be valued at X. But then you look at Shrewsbury Town and say, well, if it's valued at that, if every acre of land is worth something, well, you've got 24 acres, but you can't value a football club because you've got a football club on it. There's so many different parts of every football club as how you value it. But like everything, you know what the turnover is going to be. As we mentioned, it doesn't change that much. So you can look at that and go, well, what can I physically afford? What are my chances of getting a payback from it, and make a decision on whatever club that you're coming to buy. But you reference Birmingham spending allegedly £50 million a centre forward. There's a lot of clubs you could buy within League One for the value of their centre forward.
But also then I think we spoke to Charlie with Charlton, and they don't own the stadium. So straight up there, he said, well, literally if you buy Charlton, you're buying
the right to play,
the license to play.
And that's a lot of clubs are that way because they've had to get the money, they've had to make money somewhere, so they've just leveraged bits of the stadium, bits of the training grounds gone, and that's been done. That's why when we were approached by a lot of different investors, we see ourselves as quite a clean purchase because there's no debt. The only debt that we have is to the chairman and the vice chairman who have lent that money to the football club completely interest-free. You come in, you pay them back, the rest of it's yours. There's the keys, get yourself in. You can do what you want with that football club. And I'm not saying the football clubs where they have got debt is a bad thing either, by the way. People have to cut their own cloth accordingly. But everything you'd be buying, so we can literally say when we're selling our football club, you buy the training ground's ours, another 7 acres of land that's sat there that we own, that you can build again on that and go again and invest there if you wanted to. If that's just on pure performance of the first team, you'd go and invest in that again. You'd you'd build the bits on the stadium, but certain clubs you're buying the license, that's how it will go under the regulator, but you're buying the brand, but certain clubs you're also buying what goes with it as well.
You mentioned a couple of times Gareth Ainsworth and the importance of having a manager on the performance side who really aligns with the executive. How was it bringing him into the club?
He's been an absolute breath of fresh air since he's walked through the door. I would say we interviewed him, but it was more like he was interviewing us, really. We got him down to we actually went a weekend without appointing our head coach, because we'd heard through football circles, how the game works, that he might be interested. So we delayed announcing. We'd interviewed some candidates that all did really well, but we delayed appointing anybody until we had that conversation with Gareth on the Monday. And if you look back, some of our fans would say, well, why didn't you have a manager in for Burton? That was one of the biggest games of the season. We made the decision that it was worth hanging on to try and have the conversation with Gareth and his assistant Richard to try and see if they were interested in the project. And from that moment, he bought into the idea of a lot of the things that we've said. The stadium's good, the club's good, the fans are really, really on board.
Was it very obvious that he was the right fit?
I think as soon as if you'd have said the start of the week he's available, we'd have gone straight away. It was only later in the process that we found out there might be an interest. He talks about he doesn't want to build a football team, he wants to build a football club. That's what he's done at Wycombe. There's a proven track record there of starting with very little and building something over time. He is constantly on the record saying he wants to do that. We want to support him in that journey. The investment will be key because he wants to have a go at it with a little bit of budget behind him, as well as what we've got now. But if you watch his press conference, everything's positive, and that's what I'm about as a person. That's what he's about. That's what I think you've got to be. People work all week. They spend all the money to come to football. The last thing they want is to be moping about or negativity. Yeah, you might not win, but if you've got a bit of belief and a bit of positivity around the place, it's amazing what it can do. And just little things on a match day, like he'll just walk into the hospitality lounge and pick up the mic and start having a conversation with the sponsors. And I've never seen that in football. Normally the manager's so zoned into the game, but he's like, what can I do? 20 minutes before the game, they've had the team talk, they know what they're doing, comes and gets everybody together, and he's got time for a lot of people. And I'm speaking really well of him, but that's because speakers you find, and he has been fantastic since he's walked through the door.
Because he's got this side to him, do you find yourself planning a bit of the business side of the club with the manager rather than just keeping that within the executive?
100%. So we're sitting now and he's doing an event this evening. He's speaking at a local business, one of our local partners. He's doing a sportsman's dinner. He's involved. He's doing that tonight to try and build things for us on that front. We've got already booked out an evening with Gareth Ainsworth. He's not even playing with his band. He's just coming to talk about his career and his notoriety, his celebrity status has helped. Him being on Sky Sports and coming up Shrewsbury Town manager puts more eyeballs to Shrewsbury Town. It's something. But we've had BBC down, we've had Sky down, and a lot of that is because you've got this character who's helping build the football club behind the scenes.
Big character, musician, so he's in a band. He's got his look, his long hair. It's amazing, isn't it? It's not the quintessential football manager type person that you assume.
I hope I don't share too much, and I apologise, Gareth, if you listen to this. And but when he came in for his interview, if we're going to call it that, he turned up, and you know what to expect: the skin tight jeans, the desert boots, the shirt wide open, the leather jacket. But the car came, a really nice family car, like a Kia Sportage or whatever it was, just a normal car. I'm thinking, did not expect that from Gareth Ainsworth. Anyway, came in, spot on bloke, really good day, decided we're going to do the job, gets the contract, walks out, comes back the next day, Ford Mustang, Mach 1, 5.0, absolutely revs it through the car park, and you're like, that's what I expected. But from his day one, he was like, I'm the family man. But then he came as a rock star from then and then onwards, really.
This is all great, but when performance isn't there, I don't mean to ask a hard question, but does one go, I love the character, love him being in the exec, but you got to perform on the pitch. How do we think about that?
So this is a good time for it, really. Since he walked through the door, we've had some really good results. Up until 3 games ago, if you looked at the form table, and we were 10th in the form table. The last 3 weeks that we've had 3 home games in a week, and we'd made it a bit of a fortress. The crowd made it, people were struggling to come here. He was in the press saying that, and then we've lost all 3 games. I've just sat before we started recording today. I've watched the press to see what's happened today from our own press conference, and you'd think we'd won all 3 games because of the positivity that's there, and that's what I think is important. That yes, you're not going to win every game, And long term, if you lost the 3 games and you lost the next 10, then you'd have some difficult decisions. But I think because of that, what you talk about, the positivity, you've got a set of fans that he's already openly said at a fans forum, we're going to finish above the line, we're going to stay up. But if we don't, next year, we'll have one hell of a promotion season. And you don't get that from many managers. I feel like I'm being Gareth Ainsworth's agent today, and ultimately I'm work with him. But having the self-belief and the courage of your convictions to say that in front of people and say, we're going to get back up next season, invest with us, because come with me on the journey, he's going to be helping us with the season ticket release. Saying that is, we're not going to be Man City. We're not going to win every week. We're not always going to play the prettiest football. But what you're going to see is a team that's blood, guts and thunder, doesn't leave anything on the pitch, and you're going to be proud to support Shrewsbury Town. And that's what we're trying to get people to invest into for the rest of this season, to support us to stay up, but if not, for next year's season to come with us on that journey.
Do you find yourself ever having to be careful not to make decisions based on fan sentiment?
It is difficult. I learned, I spent 5 years at Sheffield Wednesday and working with the chairman there, and he actually said to me, because you're always going to find it difficult, because whatever you do in football, fans will never be happy. And he's a great guy, by the way. And you see that because you're a football fan yourself. You grow up, you want to, and so you find yourself making decisions. Think, well, if I'm sat on the terraces now, do I think that's the right thing to do? Do I not? And should we freeze season ticket prices because that'll keep people happy? Yes, the fan, you should. But then really you go, hang on a minute, we've only got two real commercial arms strings that we can pull, and that sponsorship and commercial is one side and ticketing is the other. If we don't increase those items slightly year by year, we're just going to, because of inflation, step backwards. So you've got to balance up. You might get a little bit of stick for certain decisions, but you've got to do the right thing for the club for the long term.
What decision did you know you would get the most stick for, but did anyway?
The one that's a lot of clubs get stick for, and I think we'll probably have the conversation at some time, is around programmes. Programmes at every football club, I say every football club, I've only worked within 2, but tend to lose money. And just having the conversation with multiple clubs last night, you talk about what's the benefit of the EFL conference and what do you get out of it. You have that conversation sat round, not necessarily in the main meeting, but over a beer, and say, do you have a programme? And the amount of people now go, no, we do a digital thing, or we don't do anything at all. And each one of those chief execs has had an absolute kicking at the time. And I sit there and go, we still do it. And we mentioned the possibility of even discussing it. And it's such an emotive part that if we ever do make that decision, I reckon we'll get more of a kick in for getting rid of the match day programme than you would from actually putting the price up in the first place.
Matt Hancock said it was the thing he got kicked for the most at Port Vale when they did it. But he said, I think what they did is they then spoke to the fans, and he literally showed them, he said, right, this is how many we produce, this is how many you buy, this is what it costs, this is what we lose. The kind of counter to that is then critique us for not being able to spend on a loan fee.
Yeah.
Well, that's your match day programme.
Yeah, it is that.
Do many people buy programmes?
The answer to that is in the previous question is no. That's why they lose
How
money.
many programmes would you sell on an average game? Just estimate.
We do about 300 to 400, programs, which for a 6,500 tent is massive. Yeah. You've got huge clubs out there that are producing 1,000 programs, only selling 500. It's going back to that routine question we said earlier on. If you've got a club that do buy into it, so we have got a decent number of people that do it. So that's the people that will be upset.
How much is a programme?
£3. But to produce, you're looking at, and that's not taking into account the time of the media team that are producing that in the week. And they're really good pieces of work that the media teams across the country pride themselves on. They have awards for who does the best programme, and the 2 clubs I've worked at are 2 great examples of they do brilliant programmes. But if you actually break it down, think, well, that media person's doing on a home game might be doing 20 hours a week doing the programme. What are they on per year? What's that? Add that into the cost, as well as the printing cost, as well as the time of everybody. Your captain's written his first words on, your CEO's written his first, your foundation, everybody's contributed to a brilliant piece of. But if you get to the end of it and people are not buying it, or you're even giving it away as part of hospitality and they're just leaving it on the chair, you're going, is that the right way to spend money? And
it's a shift in like the mediafication of how like football clubs are communicating with their fans, and it was a feed on from Gareth Ainsworth and having a character, I guess, an opportunity to leverage something that is really cool and slightly different. Programs, maybe outdated ways of communicating with fans. Have you as a club in this league where you have these entities like a Wrexham, obviously with great media products, have you as a club started looking at doing different things with your fans, creating content, like developing the brand in that kind of way?
One thing that we're in the process of at the moment is we're trying to make the commercial deals that we do more fun in that aspect. So I'll give an example. I won't give the company away because we're just finalising the deal at the moment. But instead of just activating and doing the standard, this is a deal. We announce it on the website. We put it on social media. We say I don't know, that might be on the front of a shirt. That might be a new advertising board sponsor, whatever that may be. And this is your standard. And you get so many tickets in hospitality per season. It's the standard package of rights. Because we've got a really creative media team, and I like to think sometimes I have a few good ideas. It's what can we do with that brand that resonates with the people they actually want to connect with, but also uses our most valuable asset, which is the players. People want to see the players doing daft things. If you can get them involved and just use a taxi partner, for example. So we've got a taxi partner at the moment, Vizu, and one of their things that we're going to be filming this year is getting in a taxi with the players and saying, right, without a taxi telling you where you're going to direct me to this landmark in Shrewsbury, direct me there, and watch them get things wrong, sort of humanises the players. So you get that content where people, they don't have the best game on a Saturday. Well, do you know what? It was good fun when we watched that video, and you can hopefully build that relationship with supporters and players through doing it, but also for the brand. They're not just getting the standard, this is how many eyeballs, they're getting something where they can go, actually, this went viral, or we can do it. There's another one that we're trying to do at the moment with a short-term insurance company for cars. So we're trying to do can we do fake driving tests for people on our car park? We've got that land, let's use it for something different. Can we do something that goes, this is what people want to see? The younger generation can make that into a TikTok, you can make that into Instagram, you can make that across all different things, but actually something that the players think is fun to do. The kids want to watch it, the sponsor gets the engagement from it, and hopefully they get more value out of that, so they want to come back and spend with you. We don't want to get to the end of any sponsorship deal and be going cap in hand to someone and saying, oh, do you want to renew? We want them to be coming to us and saying, because of what you've done and you've gone over and above what it says on a contract, we want to come back because that was pound for pound better than a TV campaign or better than a poster board on the side of a motorway campaign. We want to try and bring the partnerships to life in that digitalised, modern way.
But do you find they're very data-centric in their buying, or are they quite brand-centric in their affiliation, cool, we like to be involved, versus, hey, I want to know clicks, audience impressions?
It depends who you're working with. So we've done, in my previous life with Sheffield, we've done deals with big food delivery services that you cook for yourself or that deliver, and they're really keen on the digitalised businesses themselves. They want to know, right, if we can get this much from an influencer, what are we getting from a football club? If we can get this from, you're constantly compared. Our stadium sponsor is a company called Crowd. Their whole business is digital marketing. So we're actually in a position now where we're working with them to try and be able to get up-to-date data that we can then present back to these brands. Some of them that want to see a point, but some of them that have never seen it before. So we can say to them, look, this is a point of difference from if you advertise with us versus advertising on the back of a bus that's driving around Shrewsbury. We can show you who's seen it. We can show you where it is. And they're really good because we're not going to profess to be any good at this. We're on a journey. We've constantly talked about the digital marketing journey that we're on as a football club, but it's kind of driven by them because they're coming to us and saying, you can use our resource. Yes, we've got a deal, but a bit like we want to do more for them, they want to do more for us. So when we have women's games at the stadium, they're really passionate on that. So they help build the marketing campaign. Same with the season tickets. They tell us where we should be targeting. They even help pay towards our advertising because they know we don't really have that kind of budget, because they want to say, we want to show how this can work for you, so you can then take it to your potential partners and explain to them why they should invest with the football club.
Tell us about the women's team and the makeup of the club.
So I think this probably differs amongst most clubs in the EFL in that where the women's teams sit. From our perspective, they were part of the foundation, our community programme, for a number of years, but in the last couple of years they decided to go it alone, still within the Shrewsbury Town family, still wear the kit, still work with us really closely, but 3 of them became their own business and 3 directors and run as a club, but also as a business, and they've been doing really well.
So they're not a cost centre for you, bluntly?
They're not currently, no. They run as their own business completely.
Okay, so when we had Charlie Mathman on the show, he was saying that bluntly everyone knows that women's football is a cost centre to like traditional teams and the challenges of that. Do you agree with that?
It would depend. If they are part of your club and you're the ones funding it, then yes, there'd be a cost centre. To us, the only cost we incur on their behalf, we have an SLA agreement with them that says you can play at our stadium for this game. We'll help you support it. Part of working with the partner that we've just said, Crowd, is we're going to be increasing that each year, not all of a sudden playing every game on the Crowd Meadow, but an extra game per season, just because it's worked for them. We had 1,000 people attend the first game that we put on their league. Where they're struggling at the moment, because they are their own entity, people within their league have started to pay players. They're in I think it's the Midwest Premier League now. They've got to the third round of the FA Cup for the first time this season. They played that game at the stadium, the one that got through, and it was brilliant. The quality of the goals were unbelievable, and we'd love to do more. The challenge is we haven't got a Desso-based pitch. We've had TNS play at our stadium in the UEFA Conference League this year, which was fantastic. We've had a decent run in the under-18s FA Cup, so our pitches had a real lot of wear and tear on there. So we'd love to do more games with the women at the stadium, just so they can generate a little bit of money and they can continue to be self-sufficient until the time comes where, if we do get that investment, it is something that a lot of clubs, and us in particular, would like to bring them back in.
Would you like to bring them back in?
Definitely. We've done loads with the women's team since I've come in. I think it's such a growing area of football. We want to help them as much as we can. So one of the things we did last year is we got the women's team to design the third kit. We said, look, how would you feel more involved? And said, well, first of all, you're having a white away kit. That doesn't work from a women's perspective. See-through tops, menstrual cycle on the shorts. It's not the right thing to do. So we said, well, let's work together on something. So we pulled a project together where we got local women's teams involved. We got our women's team involved. We got the women that work at Shrewsbury Town. We got the development centre that's through our foundation. All the women's teams we could to design their own kits, and then we got them to vote on it. Oxen, our partner, went and made the kits. Again, we put that to a fan vote afterwards. And now the women's team wear that as their away kit. We wear it as our third kit. And it was just showing, when we launch it, everything is done with the men and women together. So even though they're not under our umbrella and under a cost centre, to your point, they are seen as part of the football club. And we want to continue that journey. But where we sit right now, if we introduce them and put them under our umbrella, the revenue that we're trying to grow wouldn't be, well, the losses would be higher because you'd be paying another set of people, but we want to get there.
Do you think more clubs will be forced to make their women's teams independent?
It depends on the attitude of your board, the revenue that you've got, or the funds at your disposal, what you'd like to do. I think most people now understand that there's so much growth that's already happening within the women's game and will continue to do so. So I think more clubs will try and bring them under the umbrella. We've keep that really good relationship with our women's team. Just on the way here, I was texting one of the directors from our women's team about the kit for next season, because we want them to be here so that if the new owners, when the time comes, decide to bring them in, it's such an easy conversation to say, brilliant. Let's get them and let's get them up. Because if we get 6,500 fans to a home game on average, but we got 1,000 at a women's game, it doesn't take much to start getting that up, and you've got that extra bit of revenue coming into the club as well. And now I get it doesn't come cheap like any football, but I think it's, if you want to look at doing things for the right thing to do, then I think it's something that you should consider.
How important, just on that kind of, I guess, with the women as well, but how important is an academy and everything to the business of Shrewsbury? Have you got strong academies? Have you got the same for women and for the men's?
So from a women's perspective, our foundation run the ETC, which is our development arm for college for young girls playing the game. They're not necessarily, because the women's team sits slightly, a lot of our ETC players get to the point where they tend to go on trial for the women's team at the end. They just run a first team from a cost perspective. But going back to the men's side, and the academy is absolutely massive, and it will become bigger. It needs to be, because we talk about how do you extract money from the pitch? How do you make more revenue? If you can build an academy and get those players playing, particularly English players, that's how you're going to get them. The challenge you have is getting them on the pitch. When you're 23rd in League One, you're absolutely in a fight every week. Do you want to be budding a 17, 18-year-old lad at that stage? Potentially not. And it's not because they're not good enough or not going to be good enough. It's just that experience tends to count for a lot. We had a discussion last year about, you probably know this already, but academies are graded into 1, 2, 3 and 4, what category you want to be at. And we operate at Cat 3, which is you go from under 9s to under 18s, but you don't have a 21s, 23s. And because of the cost of running the academy, we were saying, look, should we go to a Cat 4? But when we actually look back at it, we said not only is the academy important for getting players to the first team, but it's so important that we're the only professional club in Shropshire. We want the youngsters out there to want to wear the badge. We want to give them, even if they don't make it to get a scholarship, even if they don't make it past it, if they can aspire to play for Shrewsbury Town and wear the kit that they go and support on a weekend, we think it's important. So even though we know we operate at a loss within the academy at the moment, we think it's vitally important.
How much does the academy cost a year?
So it depends on the category that you run at. So we did a big piece of work last year. So one of the savings that we made, we didn't save as much as what we'd liked, but we saved almost 100 grand on the running of our academy. We save money by bringing it back on site. So one of the things that we wanted to do was give those players, they were training off site. We had a good relationship with the local leisure centre where they were getting, but for me, that's not been part of the club. So with the director of football, myself, and the guy that's running the foundation, is we said, look, let's get them back on site. Let's have them on the day in and around the facility so they can see the stadium, they can see the pitch, they feel like they're part of Shrewsbury Town. But also at the same time, by using our own facilities that we've got, we were able to bring the cost down in terms of renting pitches, the space. Running an academy is a massive operation, and we've got a good team that do it. And because we're keeping the costs as low as we can, they do it on a shoestring, really. But the payback can be there provided you get people on the pitch.
It's a hard one, isn't it? Because it's a bit of a jackpot funding scenario where it's once every 3 years you can have a big win, but you can never financially rely on it or predict it like you can a traditional model.
I think I call it the football lottery, which is, that.
You want the Jude Bellingham, you want multi-millions of pounds from that side, but we've done well. Our director of football's done this before, and he's doing it again now in terms of what he's trying to do is get in our players, because we don't have a 21s or 23s. We've currently got 7 of our academy players out on loan in men's football. Yeah. So they're playing Northwest Counties, Central Midlands League football, playing against men as 16, 17, 18-year-olds on what's classed as work experience loans, but it's giving them the opportunity to be, I'm a centre-half. Are you? Well, this lad's a non-league centre-forward. He's 35 years old. He's 15 stone. He's going to knock you about a little bit. But when they come back, they're going, we've played men's football. We're trying to bridge the gap between, there's such a gap between under 18s and first team. You'd love to have that 23s, but the cost is prohibitive. Can't get the word out, but you know what I'm trying to say.
It takes, it's an upfront investment to then hopefully get the value out of that football lottery when, hey, guess what, that one player can trade for 3 to 4 million, and suddenly you get that injection that you're not anticipating. You can't build your business model on, but is a fantastic addition to the club. Yeah. Just like, I guess, cup runs, similar thing, right? You can't build a model on it, but if you get a run to the 3rd or 4th round of the FA Cup, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, and we look at, going back to our financial reports that we published that year, we did well in the Cup, got to the 3rd round. We then played, in the Carabao Cup, we played Leeds, so there's a ticketing revenue there, half the revenue from the Leeds game. We then drew Wrexham in the 3rd round. Our biggest rivals, before they were anything to do with Hollywood, Shrewsbury Wrexham was a massive, massive rivalry, and that meant that the first time we played them in a long time, everything's full, the stadium's full, the hospitality's full. That football fortune, I guess, of doing well in the Cups is so important. And the year that we're in now, we didn't get to those. We got to the 1st round of the FA Cup. We got knocked out in the Carabao, and in the football trophy, we didn't win a game. So all of a sudden, the budget that you built, you don't go spec it and think we're going to hit the 3rd round every time, but you have a little bit of we'll win some, we'll lose some, and you put a number in there. But if you lose all the lot, you're up against it, and you've built a budget we want to lose under £500,000. All of a sudden, you've just cost yourself best part of 300 grand in prize money, in attendances, in future fixtures that you then can't get back. You're chasing your tail until next year.
Should we do a quick fire?
Let's do it. You go first.
In your eyes, what's the best run club in Football League? You can't say yourself.
I think the obvious ones that get trotted out there a lot of time is Brentford, Brighton, that kind of, because it's more than yes, they do things in a way where they've got things right off the field to try and extract the value that we talk about in terms of the scouting networks around the world to then come and sell players for multi-millions of pounds. But they also do things that every club does, such as the foundations or the community, depending on what you call it. every club does that. I mean, we have a fantastic foundation. Every club does, but the way they shout about it and market what they do off the pitch makes it more than a club. And I think that's not rocket science. I think every club can do it. But if you look at the sort of poster boys for the best run club in that respect, that's where you tend to look.
Does the 3 p.m. blackout protect you?
I think it's a debate that's getting more and more noise at the moment. I think it will continue to do so, and I think in the long run it will become a thing of the past. I think we've got to be careful with that, because once it's gone, it's never going to come back. But I do think, we're part of the conference that we've just been at, we've had all the different broadcasters that the EFL have done deals with come and present to us and show us what they've achieved and the numbers that they're delivering, and they're massive, and it was really interesting to see that. I think the Sky deal that we've had this year of 20 live games per club has been interesting.
Has it been successful?
I think you can't argue that they've made the product better. So we now have 6 camera coverage, and you watch what can now be recorded and seen, and what we've seen in the last couple of days at the conference is the product that's out there is good, and the games themselves are good, but now they've captured in so many different ways, and the package that goes around that, the advertising, it is better. From a financial point of view for a football club, we're in the process of analysing that right now, because yes, you get a hit up front of the extra money, but we talked about earlier on the secondary spends and things that are ground. So has it impacted our attendance? Well, we're slightly down on attendance. You're then going to look at the numbers and go, well, is that fine? You lose the money from iFollow because people are not buying. So it's a big cost-benefit analysis that we'll be running ourselves in the background at the end of the season. But the part of it is you do lose that. I go to every game. We talked about routines. I go there, I spend this, I do that, I do this at certain times. I buy a programme, which is a different debate. But that part, you're going to have to quantify, and you're going to have to take certain leaps to get to a number that you think this is what we would have done versus this what we've got. I think from a budgeting perspective, knowing that you've got the money up front from a TV deal does help, and the increased revenue from that side is a benefit. But in time, I think we'll see what the actual effect is on the 3 p.m. blackout, or moving games from a Saturday to a Thursday night. We moved our Wrexham game was from Saturday to Thursday because of the rivalry. We still sold the stadium out, but that's because of the game that was moved. It's when you moved our game versus Exeter from Saturday to Thursday, that's when you see a real drop off in terms of your declared attendances will still be okay, because season ticket numbers are counted within that. They're not in there. They're not buying the pint. They're not buying the pie. That's the difference in terms of it's difficult to quantify.
What sponsor would you most like to bring on?
I mean, this is where I champion the vegan side of things. I think my missus would be if it wasn't some sort of environmental sponsor. I wouldn't want to give you a name at the top of my head, but she'd love to see that me work closer in there with some sort of environmental sponsor. Just something to do with sustainability of the environment, I think, is where she'd be giving me a clip round the ear if I didn't mention something like that at this point.
Is there any changes that you'd make to current financial regulations?
As a collective, League One and League Two have been trying. There's been a lot of lobbying between clubs of saying, look, this is what we'd like to do to tighten it up, to stop clubs just being able to come in and go, well, we've got this owner, we're going to throw this money at it. And there's tightening of the rules at the moment, not with specifics, but hopefully that will mean there's just debates on final little parts between League One and League Two, but hopefully that will see a further tightening of SCMP rules to prevent the berries of the world happening in future. And hopefully, to the earlier point that we made, every penny that comes in doesn't just disappear out by increasing player wages. It can be used to build other things that do help the community, that do help the club long term, instead of just going into the pockets of players and agents.
Final one. You can call yourself up the night before you take the role, and you can say, here's a piece of advice. What do you call yourself up, and what do you say?
The first thing I would, particularly with the role at Shrewsbury Town, is I would say just take a deep breath before you go into everything, because from day one there was people turning up, we hadn't been paying our bills. It was all different things that you go in there with a strategy to say, I'm going to do this. We're going to build it this way. We're going to deliver it this way. We're going to have this. I'm going to set my Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays. I think I would have just said, don't go in with the plan. Just have a little bit and just take your time. Have a look at what's in front of you, because every club's different. And if I was moved to another club now, I'd do the same. You don't go in there and say, I'm going to do this. Go in there and watch what happens in front of your eyes. and then make your decisions based on what's there. Still have your ideology, still have the plan that you want to, but don't just go in and try and roll that from day one. Look at the landscape, understand what you're dealing with, and then try and put that into plan.
Brilliant.
Listen, Liam, thank you so much for doing this. This has been a lot of fun, and you've been a fantastic guest.
Loved it.
Thank you very much for having me. I'll finally get home and have a sleep after the last couple of days.
Awesome.